Welcome, everyone. Today, we want to take a look into the greatest opportunity in genomics to expand the market for everyone, or nearly everyone, and why this is so important to patients and what is actually holding us up and how we can overcome these obstacles. I want to start with a very simple observation here that most people are not fully aware of. The clinical genomics market today is still mostly untapped. And forget for a moment the multi-cancer early detection piece on the left side here. That is not reimbursed yet, so we will get there later. But the two most important genomics tests in the world, hereditary cancer testing for general populations at high risk, and complete genomic profiling for all advanced and metastatic solid tumor patients, are actually massively underutilized right now. And everyone kind of knows that. We have less than 2% utilization of hereditary cancer based on Medicare reimbursement guidelines. Roughly 60 million patients actually should get it. Conservatively, 50 million patients in the United States are qualifying under Medicare. And 18% or less than 20%, in our estimate, get complete tumor profiling. And these are massive amounts of money based on reimbursement rates that are not being used, and it has a very negative impact on patients. So what is the problem? When you analyze the situation and the market, why is the utilization so low on core genomics tests, on the most important genomics tests, when we have a clear financial incentive to get it done? The answer is that you need hospitals to actually get access to the population, and the hospitals need to play an active role. So that needs to be a top-level medical leadership and C-level decision to actually implement the right oncology procedures and the right population health procedures for hereditary cancer. And the problem is that currently, the genomics industry, here are all the players that we know: Element, Illumina, Agilent, Thermo Fisher, LabCorp, Quest, Myriad, Invitae, Natera, Guardant, everyone, and new ones like Adaptive or Hawkeye Bio, like non-reimbursed yet. And of course, our AI friends, they're waiting on the sidelines. All of these things and all the services we provide, NGS platforms, assays, clinical software, bioinformatics, novel tests, genomics CROs for pharma, all of that is a complete chaos from the perspective of the leadership of a hospital. The C-suite of a hospital has other problems. They're asking, where's the money? We need to run this hospital. How does this all make me money? Too complicated. And the medical leadership wants to improve outcomes and also can't wrap their head around all these things. So in short, the genomics industry today is too complicated, not clear enough for the actual decision makers, and therefore gets stuck below C-level. And if you're in sales, all of you watching, many of you are sales and BD representatives. When do you talk to an actual C-suite representative of a large hospital? Never. You talk maybe to pathology or to one oncologist. Do you talk to medical leadership? Probably not. You're dead on arrival. All of that is dead on arrival because you can't explain how this improves outcomes and you can't explain how it makes money. Now, the idea of a turnkey solution is basically born from that problem and observation. And I'm not even trying to convince everyone that Quantin is going to solve this whole problem, even though we do for a hospital now. But it's more in a general observation for the industry. Something needs to be done. And a turnkey solution changes this whole thing and structures the complexity of genomics into 3 central pillars that then become appealing to leadership in a hospital. It says, okay, this is not just genomics technology. At the center, you have a full stack genomics lab. On the left of it, you have patient management to make sure we identify patients and actually have qualifying patients and samples, and then manage the patients through any positives you find, both in HERCAN and in complete genomic profiling. And then finally, on the right, you have revenue cycle management, finance, and controlling, so you guarantee this whole thing makes money. And the turnkey solution assembles the complexity and then adds additional pieces to the puzzle that are simply missing right now. Setup, procurement, validation, credentialing, report generation together with the medical leadership, genetics programs that need to be implemented, patient data management, appeals management with RCM, and so on and so forth. In other words, a turnkey solution organizes the technology that we all know and love into something that can make money and can improve outcomes and guarantees that this happens. So it can deliver to C-level. And by doing so, it can unlock an enormous age of innovation and can 10x the genomics market. Because now all of these amazing technology players here can be put on a turnkey genomics platform. Complexity is being turned into opportunity, and opportunity is being turned into value inside the hospitals, who then can bill, who can access the patients, and who do not drown in the complexity down here, because turnkey solutions turn that into opportunity. So that's in short what a turnkey solution is. And now I want to show some numbers that we are crunching right now with our partners, many of them down here, to understand what that all means on a financial level. Okay, so here we have a model. Don't be shocked by all the numbers. I will go through it step by step. So up here we have hereditary cancer, and down here we have complete genomic profiling. I'm going to go through the entire technology stack and the associated revenues for each one. So here you see the tests per year. You see the NGS consumable revenue of Element Biosciences or Illumina. You see assay revenue of Agilent or Illumina. You see bioinformatics revenue, also Agilent or others. You see curation revenue of potentially Invitae, Fabric Genomics, and so on. You see the hospital genomics revenue. So this is very interesting. The revenue we generate with turnkey solutions for the hospitals and shift that capital inside. And then finally, of course, the turnkey tech and services revenue to new companies like Quantgene or partners and bigger players like LabCorp and Quest, who are for sure also interested in this whole thing. So let's start with the basics. Hereditary cancer, we have 320 million Americans. This is all US only. 320 million Americans. The percentage of the population qualifying for hereditary cancer testing is roughly 15%, in case you didn't know. Everyone with a family history of cancer, immediate family member under 50, or 2 immediate family members with cancer at any age, qualify under Medicare. That is roughly 50 million people. Now, realistically, even if you had great capture capabilities in the population to identify them, I estimate that the maximum you can get is 10% of that population per year in a hospital, right? Because you cannot identify 100% of all patients in 1 year. So it's stretched over 10 years to capture the whole thing in a best case scenario. The current utilization of this number here, we estimate at 5%. So basically, of these 4.8 million patients that could get tested every year in hereditary cancer, roughly 240,000 are actually being tested. The reason I'm saying that is, in our experiences talking to hospitals, to very good hospitals who are not bad at this, that's what we see. If you have a 1 million patient hospital, they test roughly 750 a year. And they could test 15,000. So that is the situation here. And if you go to the right, you see our assumptions are with turnkey solutions fully implemented, and we already start to see that in the projections, we can increase that from 5% to 80%. That's roughly what we are seeing. Like, so you would get basically, instead of 10%, you get to 8% of the population you would capture in that specific hospital. So not 15,000, but roughly 12,000 you can actually capture per year with the systems we are implementing. So that is a growth, right, of 75 percentage points. And that would represent a growth of roughly 16 times the testing volume. I think that is the number we are looking at. Turnkey solutions in hospitals will increase hereditary cancer testing by 1,600% for each hospital that is qualified. Now, what does it mean? In terms of NGS revenue, this is looking at the entire US market, if that would be implemented in the entire US market for a critical size hospital. So we are talking about TAM here. These are not numbers you can easily get to, but that tells you what the potential is that's sitting there. I'm not going to go through each of the numbers, but you see some very interesting things. For example, the hospitals, of course, the people who make the most money in that is the people who have the most work, which is what Quantgene is doing, what LabCorp and Quest could be doing, the actual providers. But the second largest beneficiary of hereditary cancer testing are the hospitals themselves. Hospitals are looking at roughly $700 million that they could get into their bottom line here. This is a pure bottom line for hospitals. And that's a very significant number. The second biggest segment here, assuming a $130 per test cost on assays, is actually what Agilent does, or the manufacturer of the actual assays. So that's pretty impressive. And that includes the library preparation piece. And then you see what's also surprising, we'll get there in a second when we look at the actual companies and market segments that can benefit from this. Bioinformatics and curation revenue, which is, Invitae, Myriad, potentially, there's a tweak to the business model, but also Fabric Genomics and Sophia Genetics. That's a pretty significant chunk. Now, if we go to complete genomic profiling, just also some assumptions. We have 1.9 million cancer patients per year in the United States. Roughly 50% qualify for complete genomic profiling, which turns it into 950,000 patients per year. Current utilization, we estimate at 20%. Again, what we see in very good cancer centers, that number is a little low. We see roughly 40% utilization in the good cancer centers, but more closer to 10 or less than 10 in less advanced cancer centers. So here you have a bigger deviation between top tier and second tier. And that's a terrible number. We have to consider that survivability of cancer patients goes up dramatically if target therapies are applied. And that targeted therapy application is a direct function of test penetration in the population. So if you look at what's happening here, we are looking at a growth potential of 450% if we assume in a turnkey genomics hospital, you can increase that rate in average from 20% to 90% of what it should be, right? So this is the number that we should reach, 950,000 tests per year in the United States. If you get close to it, like to 850, 880, you have a 90% penetration. I think that's very realistic in a turnkey hospital setting. And again, if we would do this in all hospitals, then this is the outcome. And you see that the hospital genomics revenue is actually similarly high to hereditary cancer. These numbers are actually surprisingly similar between CGP and hereditary cancer. Let's get to the interesting part. You can look at all these details. You can, put it on pause, look at the details. We have certain assumptions here. Assay costs per test or revenue, $170 per test. Bioinformatics, $150. Curation revenue, $150. And this revenue is basically a function of reimbursement minus costs, what you get to roughly. I'm not going to go too deep into reimbursement rates because that's a little more classified. You need a lot of knowledge to understand what's actually being paid in reimbursement. So I'm not disclosing this. But, these numbers add up to leave you some buffer, right, if you sum them up. So that was the first segment here to explain what the opportunity of bringing genomics inside hospitals actually does in terms of revenue potential. Now in part 2, we are going to take a very close look how this transposes all these numbers into actual revenue potential and new TAMs for Illumina, for Agilent, for Element, but also for Invitae, for Myriad, for LabCorp, for Quest, and for hospitals at large in the United States. We're also taking a little bit of a look at pharma, just first glance. And I hope you follow me to that video. I think it's going to be super exciting. I am looking forward to your discussions in the comments. Be critical. Tell me everything we overlooked or your opinions on it. This is the place to do it here on LinkedIn. So thanks so much and see you in the next one.